All right, welcome guys. I hope you're doing well today. Today's date is October 21st, and we are going to begin today with a welcoming ritual. So I've decided that in order to keep moving forward in our book, Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, we really need to get some background knowledge about what's going on, okay? So we need to know, why are these things happening in this book? Okay, we need to know when it's happening, okay? And we need to know what's going on at that time, okay? So here I have a timeline, and this is going to be a timeline challenge, okay? And I'm going to read to you some things that we've talked about, okay? And some things just that we haven't talked about, but that are a part of our history. Okay, so 1865, we have the end of the Civil War. Okay, so that happened in 1865. In 1870, black males could vote. Okay, they were given the right to vote. All right, and then in about 1877, all the way until 1950, and we'll talk more about what's around 1950, okay? From 1877 to 1950, we had what was called Jim Crow laws, or we now refer to it as Jim Crow laws. And we're actually going to watch a short video clip on Jim Crow laws, okay? But to give you in summary what a Jim Crow laws were, they were laws that segregated white people from black people, okay? They kept them apart. They kept them separate. And many times black people were not treated well. Actually, all the time, black people were not treated as well as the white people, okay? So they were separated, but it wasn't separated in equal treatment. It was separated, and black people were treated worse, had worse conditions, okay? So they, the public restrooms that they used were not taken care of, so they were more gross. The school books that they had to use at the black schools were used books. They were hand-me-downs, okay? They were often in very poor condition, okay? And there were a lot of other things like that, okay? So that's what the Jim Crow laws were about. In 1898, America fought the Spanish-American War. And the reason I put that there is because we just talked about that, okay, in social studies, okay? In 1914 through 1918, World War I was fought, okay? So that was the First World War, and we fought that with Germany. Then in 1929 through 1933, there was the Great Depression, okay? And just to refresh your brain, the Great Depression was a time where people lost their jobs. They lost a lot of money because everything crashed, okay? So the stock market crashed, and any money that people had in banks was gone, okay? And so it hurt a lot of people financially, but also it made them suffer because they had to work really hard to support themselves and give themselves a good life. Many people starved, okay? So that was during the Great Depression. And after that, World War II was fought, okay? And that was against Hitler and Germany, okay? And the Axis powers. So that was Germany, Japan, and the Soviet Union at the time, which we now call Russia. Okay, and so I wanted to let you know that this time period right here, around this time, so between here and here, is probably when your great-grandparents were born. Okay, my great-grandfather was born around the end of the Great Depression. Okay, and he actually signed up to fight in World War II. So that's my great-grandfather. Okay, so it was not until after the World War II, so our great-grandparents have already been alive, in 1950 that the Jim Crow laws finally ended. Okay, so that's not that long ago. Our great-grandparents were alive when the Jim Crow laws were still going on. Okay, and then 1955 to about 1970, so that's like a big window right there. But between those years, your grandparents were probably born. Okay, between 1955 and 1970. Between 1975 and 1995, your parents were probably born. Okay. And then Miss Stokes was born in 1998. Here I am. And then you were born between 2009 to 2011. We have a lot of different years in our class, or a few different years. Okay, so right around here you were born. And actually, we need to make that extended, right? Because it's a few years. Oh, there we go. And now it is 2020. Okay, so I want you to think about what's happening in our book right now. Okay, and based on what's happening in our book, I want you to guess what time period is our book set in. Okay, so if you were to go ahead and place our book on this timeline, so Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, based on what's happening in the book, where do you think it would go? All right, so I want you to pause the video, think about the different things that have taken place in the book. Okay, so we know that there are separate black and white schools. We know that we've talked about sharecropping. We've talked about the Reconstruction period. Okay, we've talked about plantations. Okay, so use all of these things to predict where we are in time. Okay, so I'm not sure what you predicted, but we're right around here. Okay, so right around the Great Depression era, in like the 30s, the 1930s. Okay, so before World War II, but in the Great Depression era. And remember, like I said, my great-grandfather was alive then, okay? And that's where our book is taking place. Okay? So I want you now to either pause the video and go watch the other video that I've put on about the Jim Crow laws, or you can go back and watch that video at the end, okay? So that's really up to you. All right, we're trying to move out of the way. Okay. All right, so like I said, our book is taking place in the 1930s, and there are some things that we really want to highlight. So, in this book, we're going to be learning, about different things that are going on during the 30s. So, the Logan children that we've met, okay, they are living in Mississippi, okay? So, they're living in the Deep South during the 1930s, which means they are going to encounter some very, very bad racism, okay, prejudice against them, okay, and so we are going to see what happens, some of the hate crimes. There's going to be boycotting, okay, and so we're going to talk about all of that in this book. we're also going to be looking at a few key themes, okay? So we've talked about a theme before. That is the what the author wants us to take away from the book, okay? So a theme of what we're reading. One of the themes is family, okay? So that's a big part of this book is family, okay? And we're going to see how, and I'll write that down actually. So we're going to see how in Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, family plays a large part, okay? And the importance of family and loyalty to your family. Another one is independence, okay? So sometimes we don't think of this word right. So let's just talk about it for a second. Independence. So if I say, I want you to do that independently, what does that mean? It means on your own. Okay, so when we think of independence, I want you to think on your own, okay? So this family is going to have independence because of their land, okay? So we've already talked about this. To Papa, it's a really big deal, okay, that they have their own land. And the reason for that is because they are getting to express their independence. They know their worth. They know that they are free people, and that they should not be treated poorly, okay? And so it's going to be really important that they maintain their dignity by having this land, okay? And then another theme is going to be justice. Okay? And justice is going to play a large role because, as we talked about, there's a lot of racism going on in this book, okay? And there are many, many injustices that Black people are facing at the time in the 1930s. Adults and children are facing these struggles, and they have to live with them every day, guys. Okay? And so we're going to see how the characters deal with this, how they maintain their self-respect even when going through these hard times, how they choose to sacrifice for their family, for their friends and people they love, okay? So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that as we go through this book, but I just wanted to really get you guys understanding where we are with this book, okay, before moving forward. All right, so last but not least, we are going to read just a few pages in our book. Okay, so I want you to think about what's going on right now in our book. Okay, so what is going on right now? So let's make a list. Okay, so we started off with our characters. So try to pause the video and think of as many characters as you can. All right, and then unpause the video. So we've got Casey. She's our narrator. We've got Little Man. And we learned that Little Man's name is something else. Okay, so Little Man gets referred to by his full name, which is Clayton Chester. Okay, but everyone calls him Little Man. It's only when he's getting in trouble that someone will bring out his full name. So Clayton Chester. We've got her older brother, Stacy. Casey's older brother, Stacy. And then right under Stacy, so Little Man's the youngest, but right under Stacy is Christopher John. Okay? And these are our siblings, okay? So these are the siblings in the story. And they are the Logans, okay? So this is the Logan family. We also have Mama, Papa, and Big Ma, okay, who's their grandmother. So that's their mother, father, and grandmother. We also meet TJ and Claude. Okay, this is the Avery family. So TJ and Claude. And then we met one more character just for a brief second. Well, we actually met two. We'll talk about the teacher. So the teacher's name is Miss Crocker. Okay, so that's who we were introduced to with Casey and Little Man. Miss Crocker's the teacher. And we have Jeremy, okay, who's a young white boy. This is what we know about him. He's a young white boy that chooses to walk with the kids to school. So that walks with the kids to school. And the reason that's important is we know he's not going to that school, right? He's going to a different school, and he gets made fun of for walking with them. He gets beat up sometimes for walking with them. Okay, but for whatever reason, we don't know why yet, he continues to walk with them. Okay? So when we last left off, we had just heard that Casey and Little Man had refused their books. Can you pause the video and tell me why they refused their books at school? They refused their books because they were hand-me-downs, okay? And they weren't just any hand-me-downs. They were in really bad condition. And on the inside of the book, they saw that they were called a bad name, okay? Just because of the color of their skin. And they said, nope, I am worth more than this. And we are not taking these books. And they were very angry, okay? And the teacher's upset with them because she told them to take the books and that they should be thankful for what they have. Okay, and so they both end up being whooped, okay, because they didn't listen to their teacher. So we are going to pick up there, and we are going to read the last 2 pages of the chapter, okay? So listen up, and this will also be posted online, okay, for you to look at. So let's get to a good place. And let's see, get the camera up so you can see. Okay, here we go. By the end of the school day, I had decided that I would tell Mama everything before Miss Crocker had a chance to do so. From 9 years of trial and error, I had learned that punishment was always less severe when I poured out the whole truth to Mama on my own before she had heard anything from anyone else. I knew that Miss Crocker had not spoken to Mama during the lunch period, for she had spent the whole hour in the classroom preparing for the afternoon session. As soon as class was dismissed, I sped from the room, weaving a path through throngs of students, happy to be free. But before I could reach the 7th grade class building, I had the misfortune to collide with Mary Lou's father. Mr. Wellever looked down on me with surprise that I could actually bump into him, then proceeded to lecture me on the virtues of watching where one was going. Meanwhile, Miss Crocker briskly crossed the lawn to Mama's class building. By the time I escaped Miss Wellever, she had already disappeared into the darkness of the hallway. Mama's classroom was in the back. I crept silently along the quiet hall and peeped cautiously into the open doorway. Mama pushed a strand of her long, crinkly hair back into the chinon of the base of her slender neck. Was seated at her desk watching Miss Crocker thrust a book before her. "Just look at that, Mary," Miss Crocker said, thumping the book twice with her forefinger. "A perfectly good book ruined. Look at that broken binding and those footmarks all over it." Mama did not speak as she studied the book. "And here's the one Casey wouldn't take," she said, placing a second book on Mama's desk with an outraged slam. "At least she didn't have a tantrum and stomp all over hers. I tell you, Mary, I just don't know what got into those children today. I always knew Casey was rather high-strung, but little man, he's always such a perfect little gentleman." Mama glanced at the book I had rejected and opened the front cover so that the offensive pages of the book faced her. "You say Casey said it was because of this front page that she and little man didn't want the books?" Mama asked quietly. "Yes, ain't that something?" Miss Crocker said, forgetting her teacher training school diction in her indignation. "The very idea. That's all the books, and why they got so upset about it I'll never know." "You punished them?" asked Mama, glancing up at Miss Crocker. "Well, I certainly did. Whipped both of them good with my hickory stick. Wouldn't you have?" When Mama didn't reply, she added defensively, "I had a perfect right to." "Of course you did, Daisy," Mama said, turning back to the books again. "They disobeyed you." But her tone was so quiet and non-committal that I knew Miss Crocker was not satisfied with her reaction. "Well, I thought you would have wanted to know, Mary, in case you wanted to give them a piece of your mind also." Mama smiled up at Miss Crocker and said rather absently, "Yes, of course, Daisy. Thank you." Then she opened her desk drawer and pulled out some paper, a pair of scissors, and a small brown bottle. Miss Crocker, dismayed by Mama's seeming unconcern for the seriousness of the matter, thrust her shoulders back and began moving away from the desk. "You understand that if they don't have those books to study from, I'll have to fail them in both reading and composition, since I plan to base all my lessons around—" She stopped abruptly, and stared in amazement at Mama. "Mary, what in the world are you doing?" Mama did not answer. She had trimmed the paper to the size of the book and was now dipping a gray-looking glue from the brown bottle onto the side cover of one of the books. Then she took the paper and placed it over the glue. "Mary Logan, do you know what you're doing? That book belongs to the county. If someone from the superintendent's office ever comes down here and sees that book, you'll be in real trouble." Mama laughed, picked up the other book. "In the first place, no one cares enough to come down here. And in the second place, if anyone should come, maybe he could see all the things we need. Current books for all of our subjects, not just somebody's old throwaways. Desks, paper, blackboards, erasers, maps, chalk." Her voice trailed off as she glued the second book. "Biting the hand that feeds you. That's what you're doing, Mary Logan. Biting the hand that feeds you." Again, Mama laughed. "If that's the case, Daisy, I don't think I need that little bit of food." With the second book finished, she started at a small pile of 7th grade books on her desk. "Well, I just think you're spoiling those children, Mary. They've got to learn how things are sometime." "Maybe so," said Mama, "but that doesn't mean they have to accept them. And maybe we don't either." Miss Crocker gazed suspiciously at Mama. Although Mama had been a teacher at Great Faith for 14 years, ever since she had graduated from the Crandon Teacher Training School at 19. She was still considered by many of the other teachers as a disrupting maverick. Her ideas were always a bit too radical, and her statements a bit too pointed. The fact that she had not grown up in Spokane County, but in the Delta, made her even more suspect, and the more traditional thinkers like Miss Crocker were wary of her. Well, if anyone ever does come from the county and sees Casey and Little Man's books messed up like that, she said, I certainly won't accept the responsibility for them. It will be easy enough for anyone to see whose responsibility it is, Daisy, by opening any of the 7th grade books. Any 7th grade book. Because tomorrow, I'm going to mess them up too. Miss Crocker, finding nothing else to say, turned imperiously and headed for the door. I dashed across the hall and awaited her exit, then crept back. Mama remained at her desk, sitting very still. For a long time, she did not move. When she did, she picked up one of the 7th grade books and began to glue again. I wanted to go and help her, but something warned me that now was not the time to make my presence known, and I left. I wouldn't wait until the evening to talk to her. There was no rush now. She understood. Okay? So that's where we're going to finish, okay, for right now. We will start back next week, okay, because on Friday we have parent-teacher conferences. I want you to think about what just happened, okay? How did Mama respond? Do you think this was right or wrong? You're going to need to complete your exit ticket today, and that's going to be one of your questions. Make sure you give evidence to support your thinking. All right, great job, guys, and I will see you in class.